If you've traveled with family, you know the struggle. Stay at a hotel, then you may or may not get connecting rooms, and you're basically just hanging out in the bathroom if you have young kids that go to bed early. Stay at an Airbnb. Well, some cities don't allow Airbnbs anymore, unless it's within a specific district or unless it's the person's primary residence, which was the case for Toronto, which is where we went. Either way, it just means they're very slim pickings and kind of expensive. That is why when I came across a home swapping app when I was looking for places to stay, which to be clear, this is completely not sponsored. They don't know that I'm making this video. I'll be sharing all the pros and cons, and I pay for everything with my own money. I was really excited, but also a little bit skeptical. In this video, I want to talk about how home swapping works, how my stay went in Toronto, and I'll end with my thoughts both as a guest, how this fits in with all my travel plans and whether I'll use it again, and as a host who currently hosts on Airbnb and Vrbo, whether I will incorporate home swapping into that mix. Chapter 1. What home swapping app? The one I used is called Kindred, and admittedly, I was attracted by their Instagram ads. They did a pretty good job with those. It looks like there are other home swapping platforms as well, like homeexchange.com, Third Home, and others. If you have experience using these or any other ones that I didn't mention, I'd love to hear how it went. The idea here with home swapping is to have a community of people who are both hosts and guests. Each time you stay at another member's home, you are using credits, 1 credit per night, and you're also paying a cleaning fee and a platform fee. For example, we booked a 6-night stay, and the total came out to $480, which is pretty amazing. To earn credits on Kindred, at least at the time of filming, you start off with 5 free credits just for signing up, and you get more credits, 1 credit per night, for when you host your home to other people in the community. You also get a fraction of credits for listing the availability of your home. So if you were to say list your house for all of October and no one books it, you would still get a little bit of partial credit for the amount of time that you had it be available. You can also get credits for referring other people, and I will leave my link below. It is totally up to you if you use it, and I really appreciate it, but please don't feel pressure to. I think I also got a couple other credits from agreeing to list my home on, I forget, like some sort of newsletter or some sort of promotion that they wanted to do, and they asked if I would do it, and I said, sure, I'll take the credits. They call this a home swap, but technically you aren't traveling at the same time that you are also hosting someone else in your house. Instead, it's just a credit system. Another way to think of it is if you are used to hosting, instead of getting paid money, you're getting paid this other currency called credits, which can only be used for future travel. Chapter 2, my experience with home swapping in Toronto. Let's start with the booking process. Overall, it was pretty smooth. The user interface was straightforward. It's kind of the same photos and title and bed and bath, kind of the layout that you are used to if you have booked from Airbnb or Vrbo. We filtered by location, dates, number of bedrooms and bathrooms, and once we identified the house that we wanted to book, we reached out to the owners and told them a little bit more about our trip. A little bit more detail than I would a regular Airbnb booking, because with a community like this, it's kind of a different level of trust that is needed for some stranger to come stay at your primary residence. There is no instant booking. You always have to make a request, and the host can accept or deny it. As far as options that are available on Kindred, it's kind of a hard comparison to make because I feel like the use case is mainly in those big cities that don't really allow Airbnbs anymore. So either way, whether you're using Airbnb or Kindred or some other home swapping app, the options are going to be somewhat limited. I felt like there weren't as many of these bigger houses that have multiple bedrooms and multiple bathrooms. The house we stayed at had 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, which was fantastic, and we are so grateful for their hospitality. But in the most ideal world, 2 bathrooms would be amazing, as would 3 bedrooms that are on the same floor. But hey, you gotta have a little bit of flexibility if you're doing a home swapping and traveling with family in general. I also think the options are a little more limited in smaller cities and smaller towns. I did a little browsing of other places, for example, in the Midwest, but hopefully this can grow as their platform grows. Now let's take a look at the home we stayed at. For privacy reasons, I'll just show some tidbits of the interiors. Overall, I really loved it. They decorated the place so nicely. You can kind of tell this home is well loved, that someone actually lives here, and every object in the house feels like there is a background story to it. It had so much character, and it all goes well together so nicely. And it made me really nostalgic for those old Airbnbs from like a decade ago. If you used to travel by Airbnbs, you know what I mean. The ones that are literally someone's house. And back in the day, it really did have this very home home swappy kind of vibe. They added fresh flowers everywhere, which was such a nice touch, and I am so grateful for how welcoming they were. The entry was straightforward with a keypad. They provided a house manual both online and in a physical binder. As far as amenities, they had all the normal stuff like towels, linens, shampoos, kitchen stuff. We didn't have to cook, but even having just plates to split the pastry or like warm up a glass of milk. That's something we can't easily do in a hotel. The backyard had a little koi pond, which was so cute, and the kids absolutely loved it. This being an actual person's house, they did ask us to help feed the fish once a day, which was really no problem at all. The kids were actually fighting over who gets to scoop up the fish food. All the communications are through their app. The tech piece of it is not unlike Airbnb, but the vibes are different. Not good or bad, just different. You know how if you book an Airbnb with an experienced professional host that has good customer service, there's both that structure of sending messages at specific times, like sending a message 2 days before for check-in, a day after for seeing how the guests are doing. There's a time frame and sort of a cadence to how things go. And also there's a warmth, I guess air quotes warmth, because is it really warmth or is it just like polite customer service? But anyway, a warmth that sounds like I'd be happy to offer X, Y, and Z. I am so looking forward to hosting you. Stuff like that. Here, it actually is somebody's house. It's someone contributing something to the community. They're offering up their own house to a stranger. So it's a little bit different. They're still friendly and clearly very welcoming based on how they left fresh flowers and all the little touches in the space. But the communication is more like, hey, did you take out the bins? Make sure you take out the bins. Can you make sure to feed the fish? Can you make sure to lock the door? All very valid things. And I totally understand if someone was in my like literal primary home. But I guess just on the traveler perspective, comparing those two experiences, they do come off a little differently. And I feel a little bit like I'm inconveniencing someone at a home swap versus I'm more, I guess, at ease at a hotel or at an Airbnb where I am a paying customer. Overall, no communications issues with the host. The communication with the concierge, that one needs work, but I'll talk more about that later. Chapter 3, thoughts as both a host and a guest. From the guest perspective, what are the pros and cons and will I be using it for future travels? We'll start with the pros. Personally, the biggest one is having access to renting a home. I know technically this is not renting, but you know what I mean. A home with multiple bedrooms, a living room to hang out in, a kitchen, all the usual amenities of a properly stocked house. In cities where short-term rentals like Airbnbs are either banned or just very limited. We struggled with this one a little bit when we went to New York, and I know how obnoxious that sounds, like you're struggling while on vacation. Very first world problem, and I totally understand and agree that local residents and having affordable housing for people who actually live there, that has priority over travelers having their ideal place to stay in a house. I get it and I totally agree. But as a family traveling with 3 generations and young children, it was tricky because unfortunately we were not given connecting rooms, and the rooms were actually on 2 different floors and the key cards only accessed the floor that you have. So we couldn't access the other room easily, but had to convene in the lobby and make plans to do that with the children in tow because obviously you can't leave a baby up in the hotel room by themselves. And then we would forget something in one person's room and had to like go back and forth. It was just really too much. And there was no way for the adults to hang out after the kids go to bed at like 8 p.m. We would just close the door of the bathroom and literally sit there together. It's not ideal. And I refuse to splurge on a multi-bedroom hotel suite because that's just not happening. There's some benefit to this from a guest standpoint, even in cities where Airbnbs are allowed. Home swapping opens up a lot more options, especially the ones that are real people's homes. We all know and recognize and are kind of sick of the super generic, commercialized Airbnb look with the boring cookie cutter interiors and art and bad towels and the half-hearted property manager. I do really miss staying at those very unique gems of Airbnbs that are memorable and add to the whole travel experience. According to Kindred, 90% of the homes that are on their platform are people's primary residences. And just from the pictures, some are even homes with children or with pets. So if you are traveling with either of those, having built-in toys and supplies would be so super helpful. Lastly, from a financial perspective, who doesn't like saving money by using some credits to swap instead of paying with actual money? I'll give a neutral when comparing Kindred to standard short-term rentals and their booking process and the check-in process. These depend on the host anyway, and at least on the tech tech level and the app communication level, they're very similar. As for cons, I think, again, this probably depends on the host, but we got to talk about the chores list. If you're staying in an Airbnb and they give you a chores list, like strip the bed, do the laundry, do the dishes, do this, do that, vacuum the house, water the plants, you're going to be annoyed, and you get to be annoyed because you are a paying customer. On a home swapping platform like Kindred, it is less landlord-renter-y and more really host and guest, which really is the root of all the pros and the cons. I want to be completely clear that we weren't asked to do anything too crazy. It was just feeding the fish and making sure we leave the towels in a pile, stripping the beds, taking the trash out on specific days. And the trash was a little tricky, I will say, because there's a whole calendar it's like every other week and there's like 3 different bins. It's a little more complex than taking both bins out every Wednesday. Completely manageable, but it wasn't nothing, and I would say a little bit more than the average vacation rental. I can imagine places that might have even more complex rules, and I'm not sure how those would be handled. For example, if you're renting a house that has a backyard and you're staying there for like 3 weeks, do you mow the lawn, or do they have a lawn mowing service? Another host might ask you to water the houseplants. What if they have an aquarium with a lot of difficult fish that you need to maintain? Potentially a little bit more work than your standard vacation. And I think it really depends on what you are traveling there for. If you are like a digital nomad and you want to set up camp in a different house for like a month and you don't mind like getting into a routine, you actually enjoy doing the mundane things in the city and feeling like a local, this might be perfect. I guess it's not completely a con. It's more matching what your expectations are. Is it completely carefree travel, or are you okay with something that takes a little bit of effort? The second thing is small, and that's kind of the lack of storage space, because this is a house that someone normally lives at. The closets and all the storage spaces are probably already full and filled with the owner's belongings, and I don't want to go rummaging through. There may not be a lot of space for you to like spread out all your belongings, fully unpack your bags, hang out every single dress and every jacket. It wasn't a big deal, and really we were only there for a week, but it was something that I noticed and I think might be an issue if you plan to stay for a longer time. A third con has nothing to do with the host, but with the Kindred platform itself. Communicating with their customer support or their concierge, that needs a little bit of reworking. They send communications to me via both the app, email, and text, but I can only reply in the app, so I can't really reply directly to an email chain. The problem with communicating on their app is that there is no message thread, so like all of your requests and conversations and questions kind of go in the same long message chain with their concierge. I think that really increases the likelihood of a misunderstanding, and I have found myself needing to over-explain and still not get exactly what I wanted. For example, I was scheduled to have a photography session at the beach house, and that was after my trip in Toronto. I was messaging the concierge to see if that could be rescheduled to a later time in the same day, or if there's anything later in the week, because my cleaners were running behind and it was cutting close, though not entirely impossible. So I was really just asking for possibilities. I tried specifically replying to the email about photography, but that was not allowed, so I had to go to the app. When I messaged about it in the app, the reply I got was about, "Oh, your Toronto trip is over. It looks like everything is good. I will close out the conversation on my end." I'm like, no, that is not what I'm asking. So I had to re-ask, "Hey, I'm having this issue with my cleaner. Potentially she's running late. What are the other times available?" And the next reply I got, it was like, "Your photography session has been successfully canceled. Let me know if you need other help." I'm like, no, I don't want to cancel. I'm just asking if there are other times. And if not, then we will work our hardest to get it ready by the appointment. It felt a little chat body, but they said it's a real human. If that's the case, it might just be how the messages are set up. The customer service agents or whoever's answering these messages are not really set up for success if you have to talk to people who are both guests and hosts. They could be really asking any number of things. I think either separating messages into different threads, like one for each new problem that you're talking about, or specifying this is like about hosting things or this is about guest things. I don't really know what makes the most sense on their end, but just from a user perspective, the customer service people are really friendly, just not quite getting the answers right. The last con I have already mentioned, and that's limited selection in certain cities or if you are looking for a bigger group. I'm sure that'll expand as the platform expands, but for now, you may have to be a little bit more flexible with your needs. Let's move on to talking about this from the host perspective. A lot of you watching this channel are either either hosting a vacation rental or interested in starting one, is this platform something you should incorporate? Although most of the homes here are primary residences, they do welcome people's vacation homes and second homes. I have our beach house list on Kindred, and you can only list one. So far, I have not received any requests to stay there yet, but I'm certainly open to it. Earning travel credits is not something of value to everyone, so I can understand if someone's like, well, I'd rather be paid money. But for some of us who really value travel and prefer to stay at kind of a vacation home or some sort of home anyway over a hotel, these credits can be really useful for future trips. And if our listings on Airbnb Vrbo are not 100% occupancy anyway, why not offer up some of those nights for this home swapping platform? Another way to think of it, if you're big on travel anyway, is instead of renting out this vacation home that you have for money and have a portion of that be deducted by taxes, fees on Airbnb, which I know are a lot, perhaps even income taxes, and then use that post-deduction, post-tax amount of money to then go book a trip and go book another Airbnb. This kind of swapping method bypasses all of those taxes and fees in between, and you might actually get a little bit more value. Oh, by the way, on the note of taxes, I know this is maybe a little bit of a rabbit hole. I would personally count any Kindred hosting days as personal days. Remember your vacation home that you're renting out, you can have up to 14 personal days and still have the whole thing be counted for business use. If you go above 14, then everything is deducted proportionately. So your property taxes would be deducted by only the percent of it that is for business use. The house depreciation would be a percentage, utilities a percentage, all of those things. So I would personally try to stay under the 14-day limit. Remember, by definition, personal use doesn't have to mean you physically being in the building and using the space. It just means you're letting someone of your choice use the space without fair rental price. And I'm no tax expert. Could you argue that credits are fair rental price? I don't really want to get into it and cause any problems. So this is just my plan going forward to stay within the 14-day limit. If you're thinking of hosting on Kindred or any other home swapping website for more than that amount of time, I would ask a tax expert for some clarification. From a hosting support standpoint, Kindred sends over any towels and toiletries and a dish soap for use at the kitchen to help reduce the cost on any consumables, but you would still be paying out of pocket for like paper products, utilities, internet, other expenses, just like for your normal rentals. Interestingly, as a guest, I don't think our host used all of Kindred's supplies. I don't think it's a mandated thing. It totally makes sense not to swap out your normal shampoo bottles for these random little tiny bottles that Kindred provides. They also send someone out to do professional photography. My session, as we mentioned, is still kind of in the works because we had to reschedule. And it's been a good few months since I've joined Kindred. I think it's hard for them to get to each new city and find new photographers that can service the listings. For cleanings, Kindred takes care of it before your guest arrives and then again cleans it after the guest checks out. It sounds like you can source your own cleaners if you have people that you already work with, but I don't know if there is a max amount that their budget allows for how much each cleaning is and what happens if your person charges above that. I'll let you know if I get a chance to host on Kindred. Their host protection policy is only $100,000 per stay compared to, say, Airbnb and Vrbo, it's multiple $1 million. You're required to obviously have homeowners insurance or renters insurance. Overall, this is definitely less protection than, say, air cover, but it's not nothing. From a messaging standpoint, they also do take care of some of the basics, like sending check-in information, checkout instructions, and asking for a review. Again, I feel like some of this could be a little smoother. So for example, when they send check-in information and it says you can ask about early check-in. So I did ask to the concierge who sent the check-in message, and then I was directed to go ask the host. I feel like, could this just be a group text? Or I don't really know how they want to structure their platform. But as of now, there are a few pieces that are a little disjointed. Easily fixed, and the information is still there somehow, but it's just not as smooth. Bottom line though, I'm really glad to have found this option, and I really enjoyed my stay in Toronto. I was really happy with the house that we found, and I'm really grateful to the hosts who shared their space with us. For our next trips, I'll be able to look at hotels and Airbnbs and Kindred to see what the best options could be. Each of them have their pros and cons, and it's super personal whether staying at someone's primary home would be your thing. but the optionality makes me really happy. For hosting, I do currently have my home listed on Kindred if anyone wants to stay. If you have a vacation home that you are already listing on Airbnb, or if you have a primary residence that you don't mind sharing, I would totally just sign up, get those 5 free credits just for being a new user, and you get to try out the platform before you even host a stay. If you use my referral link, which by the way is like the most basic referral link, and honestly, if anyone signs up and wants to leave their referral link for other people to use in the comments below, feel free. But if you do use my link, thank you for supporting my future trips, and I really appreciate it. Lastly, leave me a comment of what you think of this home swapping situation. Let me know if you have tried this or any other home swapping platforms, how that experience went. I'm still so new to this concept. I can't believe I haven't heard more about this before. So I'm just genuinely curious to what else is available out there and what do you all think. Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing if you like either vacation rental type of content or travel content. I do a little bit of both. I hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!